travelling down the New South Wales coast at the moment with small boat in tow. And I've set her onto the Bellinger River today. It's a new system for me, never fished it before. And I've also been set a little bit of a challenge from a mate of mine. He said, Nigel, I know that you love your sounder so much, and by that I mean your fish finder. He said, I challenge you to leave it at home, take your small boat, get onto a new system, and see if you can go out there and catch fish. And it poses a very interesting challenge for me because yes, I do love my fish finder. It does become my eyes beneath the water, and I do feel somewhat blind when I don't have it, but it doesn't mean that you're not out there catching fish if you don't have modern technology on board. So what I've done today, new system, I've started up the top end of the Bellinger, and I'm going to move my way down to the bottom and chase those bread and butter species, maybe a bass up the top, but then your bream and your flathead and your whiting are definitely options down low. But I've got to use all my other senses today. My eyes, my ears, potentially even the sense of smell. We'll see how we go, so stick around, I reckon. The challenge is going to be interesting. One thing I find a lot when you're fishing estuaries is that very often there's concentrations of bait in a particular part of an estuary. By that I mean prawns and bait fish and the like. And when you're out on the water, whether it's a new system or you fish it every day, I very often find you've got to go about identifying that patch of ground, like where's most of the bait. A good way to do it is move. Get up and down an estuary and start looking for signs of where the bait is. You'll very quickly start establishing indications of showering bait, prawns flickering or getting chased, flashes of bait fish or birds starting to prospect an area. They start telling you straight away that this is where the bait's concentrating. And where you find the bait, you find the predators. That's what we're trying to do right now. Find a few of them. Got to that time. What do we got here? A little Brembo. Not a bad little bream actually. I think he's woken up yet. Oh yes. Beautiful. So we came here to see. Well conditioned upper river bream. Suckers for soft plastics and baits. Hard bodied lures at certain times of the year. There you go, just on legal. He's going back to get bigger. And there's the signs of starting to explore a system. We got one on the board. Challenge is getting better. There you go, mate. Off he goes. Lovely, good sign that. We're starting to fish the right spot. And when you do find fish, don't leave them behind. I find too often that we hit a fish here and there and we often keep going. Leave those fish behind. One thing I certainly learnt from fishing the tournament scene and watching other good tournament anglers fish was once they started finding a few fish, they didn't go far away from that spot. They knew that's where the concentration was. They just then backed their ability to keep catching those fish as tide and conditions changed. We know the fish are here. Technique's starting to work. Let's keep at them. Travel towards me. It's a bit sneaky. There we go, little fella. Sneaky that. Is it? Felt a bit bigger for a reason. Got him on the side. Little guys are in the action as well. Good, starting to catch fish. Let's keep working. Another little fella. A concentration of little bream, that's all right. I'll happily work through them. You can see that they happily eat lures, much bigger than themselves sometimes. Just chomped on a squidgy wriggler, doused in a bit of S factor. I've travelled downriver a few k's and watching what the river does as we travel down, and you can very much see that where it was crystal clear up the top and where I put in at the bridge at Bellinger, now that water's taken on a slightly more murky quality, and I've tasted the water at various points down the river. Now I can definitely taste a hint of salt. Starting to see a few mullet flicking around the place. And my approach is very simple at the moment. I'm using the current, quietly drifting down the bankside, casting the likely looking spots, a lot of fallen timber, using a lightly weighted soft plastic. The idea being, put it in prime spots, work with the current, cover some bank, and just jiggle that lure from likely looking snags out into the deeper channel at the boat, and we'll see what we can find. It's a cool morning this morning and decidedly overcast, but it doesn't mean that you can't use a good pair of polarised sunglasses to identify key places to cast a lure. I think these days the technology in sunglasses is getting so good that they've got lenses now that adapt to different light conditions, and the guys at Spotters have certainly got their head around how to best do that. And oh, that was a fish. What it means for you though is that so often we want the ideal conditions when we go fishing, and it very rarely happens. You fish when you can and you make the most of the conditions that you got, but just because it's overcast doesn't mean I can't get out there and use my eyes to pick prime places to fish. And let's face it, I don't have the sounder today. The next best thing is my eyes, but I'm making the most of it. I've got good quality polarised sunglasses. I can penetrate that water even in low light conditions, and it's definitely going to help me put lures, or baits for that matter, in the right spot. That's a better fish. Come on, that fish is shaking his head at me. He feels a bit better. He feels a little bit better. Come on. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Didn't that fish belt that? He's a slightly better fish. I put it at the base of a big root system on the bank there. Lovely. And gradually fished it out. You can see a lot of fallen timber in the banks behind me there. I'll just get us out a bit. And the tide's running out now, and you often find that certain structures attract fish at high tide, that it gives them some opportunity to shelter and feed. And then as the tide recedes and that water runs out around those spots, it doesn't mean that the fish are going to go far away from that. That's their feeding ground. You'll tend to find that they just branch slightly further out into the channel. So even though you've got some really good structure up out of the water, don't be shy to put your cast in there and work them out. The results can be very good. There's a very healthy, fat little bream, and aren't they a staple for so many of us fishing the estuary systems? And for me, it's no better way to do it than drifting your way down a bank, gently hopping a soft plastic. And we've got a big variety of soft plastics on our market shelves these days. Today, I had the pleasure of driving up the coast and going and harassing Steve Starling the other day. I did pilfer a bit of gear out of his shed. He's given me some stuff to try, but I'm using one of his favourites, a squidgy wriggler, lightly weighted jig head, bit of S factor on it. And don't these fish love a well presented plastic? He'd probably thought that's a prawn coming hopping through his domain, and he thought it'd make an easy meal. He's given me a little bit of enjoyment, and I think I'm going to put him back to grow bigger. But there we go. Using the minimalistic approach today. A box of jig heads, bag of plastics, light-weighted spin rod, little bait, no technology, and having a lot of fun. Off he goes. Beautiful. Nothing better than catching them. Letting them swim away to grow bigger and nastier and smarter. Time for me to get back spotting and catching them. Starting to enjoy the day. Very engaging way to fish. Very visual, very entertaining, and very easy. I think if you want to get out on your estuary and catch a fish for the first time, yourself a couple of bags of plastics, 2 to 3 inch size, something that looks like a little bait fish or a prawn. It's a mixture of jig head weights, and all I'm doing is selecting a jig head weight that I think will get me to the bottom, and you can see by this water it's probably 1 to 3 metres deep. A light spin outfit, 2 to 4 kilo, using a 3-pound braided line. It's one of the bite detection lines from Shimano, 2 metres a litre. And then all you want to do is initiate a drift down a bank that looks good. Cast towards the shore, close to a bit of structure if you can see it, and then gradually work that plastic out to you as you fish with the current. And stay in contact with it the whole time, watching your line. The line tells you everything that's going on. The moment it slackens, it means you're on the bottom. Give it a little hops up and make it look like a little injured or wounded bait fish or prawn, and then simply keep that line tight and let it go back to bottom. As it slackens, you just keep jigging it. Every time you see something slightly different, I strike. If there's a little tap or see the line suddenly speed up, usually means something's picked it up and away you go. Easy. I'm not very smart. I managed to master this technique quite quickly. I reckon anyone out there can do it. Great way to explore your estuary and come across a whole range of species. There's a good looking spot. It's such an engaging way to fish. You're just watching that braid the whole time. You'll hit bottom every now and again, it slackens and you hop it up and all of a sudden you get that slightest little dart of the line and you're in amongst the fish and the battle begins. Another reason that when you're fishing like this, you want to have braided line that you can see. A lot of braids out on the market and high visibility ones. I highly recommend that you pick up one that you can see in the water because it's the way to fish like this. You've got to see what that lure's doing, when those fish are biting it, to take advantage of a very, very exciting way of fishing. He's no monster, but he's a sign that there's fish about. And where there's smaller fish and average size fish, there's going to be some bigger ones. Let's get into them. You've got to have all your senses highly tuned when you're fishing it at any time, because sometimes you hear fish, sometimes you even smell them, and that does sound funny, but when there's a lot of predatory activity going on down beneath the surface, they're eating prawns, they're eating bait fish, you tend to find a lot of oil gets released into the water, and quite often that results in a fishy smell getting emitted to us on top of the water. It sounds kind of funny, but sometimes you can smell fish before you come across them. And I think keeping your ears out for signs of buffing fish, bait getting chased, oh no, bait getting chased, or a sense of smell that indicates something's getting eaten in the area, just tells you that that's where you've got to fish. And that was very nearly a good one. And when you listen to those signs and you follow a bit of instinct and you start fishing in the right spots, applying a bit of good technique, you'll get into the fish much quicker than those guys that are blindly going up a river, just casting a line in any old spot. Here's a couple of outfits that will get you well on the way to catching some fish. Today the two outfits I've got is the Katana Nano from Shimano. It's a 7-foot rod in a 2 to 4 kilo weighting, and I've also used the 6'6" Starlo jungle sticks in 1 to 3 kilos. Match those up, 1000 size reels, 3 to 4 pound braid, and you're well on the way to some great finesse soft plastics fishing. Cruising along these banks, flicking that little jig head off the bottom, slowly from the shallows out into the deeper water. Hopefully intersecting fish on the way. That was a good fish. He had a fair bit of weight and he came back and ate it. Beautiful. Yes. What have we got? Oh, flatty. Good flatty. That would have been the same fish coming back to eat that. It's an interesting thing when you're fishing with soft plastics, you'll often get a bump or a whack from the fish. If you miss it on the first go, don't give up and bring that lure back to you. Put it back to the fish, because very often this feels like the natural thing to them and they just think they've missed dinner. So if it comes back into their space, they'll very often come back and have a crack at it. And there you go, the benefit of just speaking about watching that line, keeping that jig head close to the bottom. This is where the hunters are. They're down there looking for an easy feed, and if you make that soft plastic look like part of the deal, rods are bending. Pretty fish, beautifully marked. So many of us love chasing these things all over Australia. When you got one in the net, or in the boat, or on shore, you do have to be careful with them because they are armed with some pretty nasty bits of gear. I'm handling this fish as little as possible. If you do have a net which supports the health of fish, that means not a knottable net, very easy just to put them back in the water from your net, turn her upside down, see you later. Got my flatty, got my brim. To my mates back home that said I couldn't do it without my fish finder. Guess what? We've done all right. Using some good old-fashioned instinct and a bit of good fishing technique. On top of carrying around 2 spin rods to get the job done today, I am travelling exceptionally light. Box of jig heads, range of weights, range of hook sizes to match different soft plastics and depths of water that I might want to fish, and to accompany that, box with a whole bunch of soft plastics. These are from the Squidgy stable, mixtures of paddle tails, wrigglers, good prawn and bait fish imitations. Don't get too confused with colours, get yourself some natural colours and a couple of bright ones, and you're well on the way to travelling light, enjoying a day on the water. Showing you a bit of technique now. It's nothing stopping you getting out there and getting amongst them yourself. Oh, what have we got here? Oh, hello. Oh, a whiting. A whiting has come to the party. Not a bad little whiting either. There's a chunk. Darlow's jungle sticks. Certainly likes his whiting and his bread and butter species. He's developed a very handy little rod for catching them. I know he'd be happy with this, and I definitely am. There you go. Just goes to show you, well presented soft plastics in the estuary will fool everything that's out there chasing those little baits. Little bait fish, prawns. These guys are all out there hunting actively for them, and you put it in front of them. Light outfits, soft plastics are a very, very neat way of exploring any estuary, whether you fish it every day, you get to a completely new system like this one today. It's the Bellinger system in New South Wales. Great little spot for the bread and butter species, obviously, and a very handy little technique. Go down the shops, get yourself a light, sensitive 6'6", 7 foot, 1 to 3 kilo spin rod, load it up with 3 to 4 pound braid, a couple of meters of 4, 6 to 8 pound leader, box of jig heads, box of soft plastics. Whether you're on shore in a little boat like this, you're well and truly in the hunt to getting yourself in amongst some great bread and butter species fishing.
It's Bill Klassen here from The Fishing Show, and if you like this instructional video and want to learn more, it's simple. Go to fishingshowtv.com.au and see a whole host of additional videos.